Reviews. Creed 3. This series played out on the fact it was linked to a big franchise that people obviously loved. This was the first attempt to not get as influenced. I'm guessing due to Sly getting older and the fact they probably want 2 more films to get to the 50th anniversary of Rocky, it all feels desperate. Main issue is the bland lead. No charisma, presence or chemistry with anyone. He has nothing memorable about him. His attempts to look tough, growl or trash talk are embarrassing and really he's just not a great fit. The wife who isn't musically talented to anyone with ears. Mrs. Auto-Tune offers nothing. Daughter is sweet though. The antagonist is ridiculous. Such a played-out plot. He decided to do what he did. He bought a gun. Yes, he got in a situation but he had as much hate and it was completely his doing. Then got time added on. Again his fault. He then gets given a completely unrealistic opportunity and cheats blatantly but still wins. It's all ridiculous, poorly written and terribly acted. This guy genuinely looked off his face in most scenes, not sure what he was trying to get his face to do. Franchise is dead. The characters and story are enough for any more films. They have no importance and at most 2 was the absolute limit. Poor. The performances of this movie is what saves it from being a complete flop. The Creed franchise suffers from trying to live up to what Stallone accomplished with Rocky 1-4. And this is the problem with films today. The first 2 Creeds had that same grit feel of the Rocky franchise and this movie did not have that. The scenes were anticlimactic and generic. The story seemed to suffer from not having enough source material and first-time director Michael B. Jordan made the mistake of thinking this script was good enough without even mentioning Rocky. Okay, they mentioned him once. Yeah, that's it, once. Which is ironic because the whole story is based on what got him here to this point. I also didn't like that they went the MCU route. CGI should not exist in this world. Sorry I had to say it. We have part 3 in a spin-off franchise that recycles characters from the original source material. What happens when you use none of the original characters and go rogue? You get a bland story that is more predictable than the ending of Creed 2. Now, don't get me wrong, I really enjoyed the film and thought it was a solid okay. It is part 3, after all. Adonis MBJ past has caught up to him in the shape of Damian Jonathan Majors. Turns out, as we knew, Adonis was a hoodlum and used to hang with the wrong crowd. Damian was an up-and-coming boxer who went to jail, reason really isn't worth noting, for 18 years, and now he's back to claim everything he believes was stolen from him by Adonis. Not a bad idea, yeah. The issue is that it's tiring and predictable. We're aware Adonis will have to square off to Damian, and we all know how it's going to end and there's gonna be a training montage, a lot of smack talking, but no Rocky. Although I didn't miss seeing Rocky, rubbing him away from the franchise is a negative move and having him in Adonis' corner would have made the movie feel complete. See it if you're a casual movie goer. First of all, I'm a massive Rocky fan and think Creed 1 and 2 are excellent. Both in direction and scripts. The Rocky Creed films are more than just films about boxing, they are about relationships outside of boxing. Each film is about a different struggle, that requires finding a way to overcome it. Unfortunately, this film has the weakest script, that fails in developing any real relationships, or motivations for any of their actions. I just didn't care about anyone in this film. I'm a big fan of Michael B. Jordan, Tessa Thompson and Jonathan Majors, but this film failed to display their talents. It suffers from horrible pacing. I feel the film needed another 30 minutes to run time. I also think directing is a skill in itself and only a few actors are able to swap hats. Unfortunately, this film shows Michael B. Jordan's inexperience. Sly Stallone is the heart and soul of this franchise and his absence is evident. It just didn't have the magic that made the previous films more than just a boxing film. A strong entry into the Rocky franchise that encapsulates the boxing world both in and outside of the ring. Adonis Creed is a retired boxer working as a promoter. Creed 3 explores his new life, post-retirement and what it means for him and his family. An old, brother-like, friend from Creed's past, Damian Anderson played by Jonathan Majors, comes back into his life which sets off a series of events. We get to witness Creed's post-boxing story whilst also witnessing Damian's much-delayed boxing story. The film was built up really well, especially in the first half where it takes its time to introduce us to the characters, plot and theme of the movie. Despite being 2 hours long, it's clear that a lot of the movie got chopped as the second half was rushed, which is a shame as the film could have given us so much more prior to the main event. Jonathan Majors was fantastic. His character had menace, pain and emotion. What's great is that the relationship between Creed and Anderson was morally gray, so you could empathize with both sides of the story, which make the movie more heartfelt. Michael B. Jordan was solid in his role as Creed as per usual, and the supporting casts of actors and boxing personalities, both new and old, were a lot of fun. The choreography, which was influenced by MBJ's love of anime, was good despite some of the usual big screen over-exaggeration, and the soundtrack was fire, opening up with The Watcher from Dr. Dre's 2001. Those hoping to see Rocky on screen shouldn't hold their breath. This is a real departure from other movies in the Rocky verse. The absence of Stallone's input, ignore the produced by, credit to Stallone, he wasn't involved, is felt throughout the film's style, writing, direction and lack of any sentimentality. It simply doesn't feel like a Rocky Creed movie. It's darker, more angry, more miserable and a lot less fun. But worst of all, you just don't care about any of the characters. And that means no hairs on the back of your neck as you approach fight night. In the fight, the way it was shot is very stylistic with heavy CGI and feels further removed from reality than the other movies, and hey, they weren't realistic. If you forget it's Creed or part of the Rocky verse, on its own it's an okay film. Stack it up against what's been before and after what was a really entertaining first and second Creed installment, it's a bad movie. Hopefully that's it now, unless Stallone gets back involved, then maybe. This might have been the shortest Creed film of the series, but it felt like the longest. Creed 3 is just boring. It might be even more predictable than Creed 2, which at least had a better storyline, if only a rehashed one. Creed 3 is the story of Adonis Creed getting visited by a teenage friend from back in the day. His friend ended up going down one path in life. Adonis Creed went down another. Through some predictable plot points, they no longer like each other. The only shining star of this movie was Adonis Creed's daughter. That was the only new and interesting part of the entire movie. After watching this film, I can understand why there is no Rocky Balboa in it. Not having Rocky Balboa in it did not make the movie better either. The Creed movie franchise is over. I will not watch another one because there is nothing new and original about any of it. What a huge disappointment. Michael B. Jordan fails dramatically at reinventing the franchise. On the positive side, he added diverse casting and characters, successfully checking the boxes of Black, Hispanic and even hearing-impaired representation. He introduced the first female sparrer in the franchise. And he wiped out Rocky from the movie, so there's no trace of that old world relic. All those boxes were checked like a good student of New Hollywood marketing. Great. Except the two things kill the effort. First is the fact that despite all of these cosmetic changes, he was unable to change anything material to the actual film structure, story or style. Entire portions of the movie look like a copy-paste of Rocky 3 and Rocky 4 scenes. So while Rocky was wiped out, Rocky is still everywhere. And it almost feels as if Michael B. Jordan were saying that he had nothing new to add. And when he added something, like the ridiculous conceptual scenes of fights where the audience is pulled out, he made it worse, showing he may be a good actor. He certainly has at least good screen presence, but clearly not a great filmmaker. Second is the ridiculously empty and lazy screenplay. Characters say all the right things and check all the right boxes, but they lose all depth, and become caricatures of themselves, with actors trying to pull it off best they can, but visibly struggling. Ultimately, the movie becomes a little boring, all in waiting for the final boxing scene, which feels like it's never coming and eventually also disappoints. Some may say, well, a boxing movie is a boxing movie, it's not the space for film innovation, but they should just watch $1 Million Baby to see that's not true. Creed 3 is just a creative failure. Okay, maybe guts aren't an organ, but there are things missing in this movie. Those things and Sylvester Stallone. He's missing, and his absence is felt, when often this movie is trying so hard to make you do just that, feel. With no heart and no guts, it's hard to do that. The boxing scenes here feel like a video game and the non-boxing scenes feel like a Lifetime movie. The only reason this movie is a 7 and not a 6, is because of the screen presence and charisma of both Michael B. Jordan and Jonathan Majors. They are incredible. But there is no grit. No toughness. It's too glossy. It's nice to have a running time of under 2 hours. It is. But this story is unbelievable with the sudden ascent of the antagonist. With the time given, a nice Rocky montage with cheesy rock music or even rap music would have been an effective shoutout. The movie also takes way too long to get to the root cause of the legal incident that pulled these two guys apart as young men as well. This is the weakest Creed film by far. In the Rocky verse, it's right at the bottom there with Rocky V. In fighting terms, this portion of the Creed trilogy is remarkably underweight at weigh-in. Unfortunately, I paid good money to watch this film and was greatly let down. Obviously it was a remake of the Rocky movie, featuring the same premise, however, sadly lacking in intensity, ability and the boxing ring. It lacked the power of Rocky of wanting the good guy scenario. Any involvement by the audience was placated by the lack of any empathy, emotion that an audience invests in the movie. The fight scenes lacked any reality. Unfortunately, the surreal scenario lost any impact or realism. The actors lacked any gambit of acting. Very lame, and frankly it was obvious, just another way for them to earn $. I hope they don't make Creed IV because this one was boring and dark compared to the previous two. It has a lot of slow scenes. The music was not the right one even in the ring. The sound was not even like in the Rocky movies. I did not feel it at all. The acting was bad. Stallone himself said he would have taken a different path with this movie. Unfortunately, he, believe it or not, does not have the rights for the character Rocky Balboa. I bet if Stallone would have been more involved, this could have turned out better. Michael B. Jordan even changed the character name from Adonis to Donnie. Seriously. I should have chosen Shazam 2 instead. But I wanted something more realistic and not the typical superhero or horror genre that is playing the movie business nowadays. P.S. Whenever you see a 10 or a 9 rating here, it's fake. People get paid to write those high ratings. The Creed boxing action or melodrama series has none of the magic of the early Rocky films that it spun off from, with Creed 3, a typical example. Titular champ Michael B. Jordan, Cherasmalis, also on his directorial debut here, retires to a dream LA home with pop star wife Tessa Thompson, but then moody childhood pal Jonathan Majors, good, but no Mr. T, re-emerges after 18 years in jail. Via Keenan Kugler and Zach Balin's hole-filled, cartoonish, short-cutting writing, Majors becomes Jordan's nemesis, for whom he must return to the ring, to fight in a showdown finale. As lamely cheesy as it sounds, it still has some Hollywood polish, but Creed is definitely no Rocky.